Our number one goal is to make sure that we're structuring our business in those markets as times change to make sure that we're protecting our assets and investing at the appropriate levels.
For decades, John Deere was more than just a brand. It was a symbol of trust, tradition, and the heartbeat of rural America. Its unmistakable green machines were passed down like family heirlooms, and owning one wasn't just practical, it was personal. But now, something's different. And not in a good way. Behind the polished branding and legacy pride, a quiet but growing backlash is erupting. Farmers are pushing back, right to repair battles are heating up, and small-town communities are being forced to ask a painful question. Is John Deere still on their side? Because what's unfolding isn't just a shift in tech, it's a reckoning. And the outcome could redefine what it means to be loyal in a world where even the most trusted names are starting to blur the line between helping and holding on too tight. A legacy built on steel and soil. John Deere is a symbol of endurance, innovation, and hard work. It was founded in 1837 by blacksmith John Deere. The company revolutionized farming with its polished steel plow. This plow changed the game for farmers dealing with the tough Midwestern soil, offering a tool that could actually break through the dense earth. From these modest beginnings in Grand Detour, Illinois, John Deere grew into one of the most trusted names in farming. Its iconic green and yellow logo became more than just a symbol of machinery and came to represent the spirit of rural America. For much of the 20th century, John Deere expanded rapidly, deeply integrating itself into the lives of farmers and their communities. It was a cultural icon, one that embodied the values of hard work, perseverance, and pride in the land. Its manufacturing hubs in Iowa, Illinois, and other Midwestern states fueled towns and fostered a sense of community pride. Families worked for Deere for generations, and this connection between the company and its workers created a bond that was rare for any corporate entity. This was about the future of entire towns, and Deere's commitment to manufacturing everything in America reinforced its image as a company that didn't just make profits.
Deere & Company reported a net income of more than $2 billion for the second quarter after a 12% drop in revenue,
but also contributed to the national economy. While many manufacturers moved their operations overseas to pursue cheaper labor and globalization, John Deere chose to stay true to its roots. This decision paid off in the loyalty of its customer base, who saw the company as more than a business. It was a piece of American identity, synonymous with quality and pride. By 2025, however, that once strong image began to falter. The company's new strategic choices raised questions about whether Deere could stay true to its foundational values. With a shift toward corporate restructuring and the challenges of globalization, the company's legacy was being re-evaluated. John Deere had always prided itself on manufacturing in the US, but now the company faced the harsh realities of the modern economy. Would they remain the symbol of American grit and quality, or would they transform into another faceless corporation chasing global profits? The brand's identity is now under scrutiny. People want to know if Deere can still live up to the promises it once made, or if its future will be shaped by the pressures of corporate decisions far removed from the heart of rural America. Tariffs and the struggle for recovery. As the US farm economy begins to show signs of life after years of hardship, John Deere is sounding the alarm about a new threat: tariffs. After a tough period marked by low commodity prices and rising interest rates, the agricultural sector was finally starting to recover. But looming trade policies, particularly those concerning steel and aluminum tariffs, have the potential to disrupt that fragile recovery. Deere's CEO, John May, spoke about the company's progress, emphasizing their focus on optimizing inventory and positioning themselves for success in a challenging environment. However, the road ahead remains uncertain. Deere's forecast for 2025 projected net income between $5 billion and $5.5 billion. But these numbers didn't take into account the potential impact of tariffs. If enacted, these tariffs could drive up production costs, making it harder for farmers to invest in new equipment. Andy Campbell, Director of Insights at Tractor Zoom, pointed out that adjusting to a slower agricultural economy could take time for both Deere's dealerships and corporate operations. The lingering challenges of oversupply and inflation, were further complicating an already difficult situation. Farmers have always faced challenges, but with shifting trade dynamics, they may be more vulnerable than ever. Retaliatory tariffs, particularly from key partners like China, are still a major concern. In response, John Deere has begun modeling worst-case scenarios to prepare for global demand disruptions. During an investor call, the company's leaders acknowledged that China's new tariffs on U.S. agricultural equipment would likely have minimal impact. However, they expressed more significant concerns over the broader tariff regime and how it could affect machinery exports and raw material prices. A 25% tariff on imported steel, for example, could further increase Deere's manufacturing costs that inevitably trickle down to farmers already struggling financially. Despite these uncertainties, there are some positive signs. John Deere has doubled down on domestic production, seeing it as a necessary move to push back against outsourcing. The company believes keeping manufacturing at home is key to protecting American workers, especially in an industry where job security feels more fragile than ever. But not everyone's buying into this vision. Billionaire investor Mark Cuban is one of the most vocal critics. He's been ringing alarm bells, warning that these kinds of protectionist strategies could easily backfire. From his perspective, the idea of slapping higher tariffs on foreign goods is, in his words, completely off track. He argues that instead of helping companies like John Deere, tariffs might actually give foreign competitors a leg up, allowing them to grab market share while American businesses struggle with higher production costs. On top of that, Cuban points out another concern. Rising tariffs could raise prices for everyday consumers without actually fixing the core problems plaguing U.S. manufacturing. Meanwhile, John Deere's recent policy shifts are already having a massive financial impact, and farmers are feeling it the most. These folks are working with razor-thin margins to begin with, but now, with equipment prices soaring and repair fees reaching absurd levels, the strain is becoming unbearable. Deere has seen a decrease in used equipment inventories after intentional production cuts, and rising corn prices have given farmers more confidence to spend. In fact, Deere's first quarter net income came in at $869 million, slightly above expectations. The company continues to invest in forward-thinking solutions like autonomous machinery and Starlink connectivity kits, aimed at boosting productivity in rural areas with weak infrastructure. Still, with trade tensions unresolved, Deere's message remains clear. Without tariff clarity, the farm recovery could be at risk before it even takes root. John Deere's move to Mexico. In late 2023, John Deere made the decision to shift more of its manufacturing operations to Mexico. This move, which was initially framed as a strategic pivot, quickly sparked a wave of criticism, especially from its American workforce. For many, it seemed like a betrayal of the company's core values in favor of corporate greed. What started as a business decision has now escalated into widespread layoffs across John Deere's U.S. facilities. In the past year alone, the company has announced or carried out layoffs that have affected hundreds of workers in cities like Waterloo, Ankeny, Ottumwa, and East Moline, and more cuts are expected later this year. One longtime worker at the Harvester Works plant in Illinois shared his frustration, saying the company's actions seem to be driven purely by greed. With layoffs looming daily, he pointed out the increasing uncertainty among employees. The worker, who asked to remain anonymous, couldn't understand why Deere would make such drastic moves when the company was posting record profits. In fiscal year 2023, John Deere reported over $10 billion in profits and spent more than $7.2 billion on stock buybacks. Meanwhile, CEO John May's total compensation reached $26.7 million, and shareholders pocketed $1.4 billion in dividends. This stark contrast between the company's financial success and the layoffs only fueled the anger among employees. Some workers believe the company's shift to Mexico is about reducing costs, with cheaper labor and lower steel prices in Mexico making it a more attractive location for production. The timing of these cuts, combined with the company's lack of communication, has only made matters worse. Workers in Iowa and Illinois reported that morale had plummeted, and the slow, quiet nature of the layoffs only fueled anxiety and mistrust. Employees have shared that management is avoiding traditional communication channels, seemingly to hide the truth about the layoffs until seasonal production targets are met. One worker from the Harvester Works plant described how management seemed intent on keeping the layoffs a secret until the year's production was completed. Despite these concerns, John Deere has not publicly addressed the many requests for comment. However, leaked internal communications suggest that the company is now embarking on a broader global transformation. Sources have reported that Deere plans to relocate its skid steer and compact track loader operations from Dubuque, Iowa to Mexico by the end of 2026. This follows a similar move in 2022 when the company moved production of cabs from another facility in Iowa. As John Deere continues to evolve, it remains to be seen how these shifts will impact both its workforce and the future of farming in America. John Deere executives have offered explanations for their decisions to offshore production, claiming these moves are imperative for global competitiveness. However, when looking beyond the corporate speak, it becomes clear that these changes are more about cost saving than any real strategy to maintain competitiveness. The truth is, these shifts are not just about managing expenses. They are about sacrificing communities and people for the sake of the bottom line. These workers didn't lose their jobs because of a spreadsheet. They were betrayed by one. The ripple effects in the heartland. The economic fallout from John Deere's offshoring strategy is causing ripples through the American Midwest, hitting towns like Waterloo, Ottumwa, Dubuque, and Molina the hardest. These communities were once deeply connected to the company, and now they're dealing with two massive blows: job losses and declining local commerce. The company's first quarter of the 2025 earnings report only added fuel to the fire. Net income dropped by 50% compared to the previous year, and net sales plummeted by 30%. The slowdown is about the entire economic ecosystem beginning to shrink. In Waterloo, a small business owner who serves many Deere workers described the changes in the town. He explained that it's not just about losing a paycheck, but about losing the very pulse of the town. He could feel the impact when fewer people came in for lunch, and he noticed the tension when regular customers started talking about leaving. In Ottumwa, the pain was even more profound. Over 100 workers there had taken early retirement packages, fearing deeper cuts and a production shift to Mexico. Chris Lawson, who worked at the Ottumwa plant for 22 years, warned that if Deere left, so would the town's economic foundation. With a population of only 28,000, Ottumwa would have little to fall back on. Local banks in the region reported increasing concerns over consumer lending defaults, and commercial landlords were seeing small retailers downsizing or shutting down altogether. In Moline, civic leaders revealed that city tax revenues were falling below projections, with at least 2 school districts halting capital improvement projects due to uncertainty about future property tax income, which depended on Deere-related employment. Meanwhile, Deere's production continued to decline. In February 2025, the company announced a 37% drop in sales for its production and precision agriculture division, and the small agriculture and turf division saw a 28% decrease. Local suppliers who relied heavily on Deere contracts were also preparing for their own layoffs. This downturn was further exacerbated by a 35% revenue shortfall, as farmers postponed purchases of new machinery due to a decline in crop income and rising interest rates. CFO Joshua Jepson explained during an earnings call that the company's primary focus remained on understanding how tariffs, especially those imposed during the Trump administration on China, Canada, and Mexico, might affect their customers.
President Donald Trump today vowed to impose a 200% tariff on John Deere's imports.
Steel and aluminum prices continued to climb due to a 25% import tariff, putting even more pressure on Deere's manufacturing costs and further squeezing margins. The ripple effects of Deere's decisions were felt far beyond the factory floor. It was about the collapse of the entire infrastructure that supported these towns, and the emotional and cultural toll was just as severe. John Deere had always been more than just a company to these communities. The green and yellow logos adorned everything from Little League uniforms to community parades. But But now, those symbols felt empty. A laid-off employee from the Dubuque plant reflected on the loss, noting that it was the lack of communication from the company. There were no town halls, no roadmap for the future, and no one in the company was willing to engage with the community on the ground. As of March 2025, Deere had not announced any recovery or reinvestment plans for the affected areas, leaving local officials to try and piece together their economies with no real support from the company. The trust that had been built up over decades was rapidly eroding, and with each layoff, the question was whether these communities could ever recover from the slow, ongoing economic gouging they had suffered at the hands of their once steadfast partner. The announcement of John Deere's decision to shift production to Mexico in early 2024 set off a firestorm of backlash that reverberated far beyond the company's headquarters. For many workers, farmers, and the general public, John Deere had always represented itself as a symbol of American craftsmanship and rural pride. The backlash was swift and intense, as many saw the decision as nothing short of a betrayal. On social media, the hashtag #BoycottDeere quickly gained traction, with former employees and longtime customers voicing their outrage. Protests erupted in several Midwestern towns, with unions accusing the company of putting profits above people, especially given its record-breaking financial performance in recent years. Political pushback. The outrage wasn't confined to just the public. Elected officials, especially in the Midwest, wasted no time in criticizing the company's move. Governors from Iowa, Illinois, and Wisconsin, states that had long been home to Deere's operations, were vocal in their disapproval, urging the company to reconsider its decision, citing the severe economic impact it would have on regional communities. In Washington, calls for reform grew louder. Lawmakers from both parties began pushing for new measures to discourage offshoring, including tax penalties for companies that move jobs overseas and incentives for businesses to keep production stateside. While some viewed these proposals as little more than political theater, others saw them as a sign of growing frustration with corporate practices that prioritized global profits over local workers. The debate quickly became part of a larger national conversation about the future of manufacturing in the United States. In January 2025, a group of lawmakers introduced the American Workforce Retention Act, which would tie federal subsidies, such as those received by agricultural and manufacturing companies, to specific benchmarks related to job retention in the US. While the act is still in the early stages and has not yet been adopted, it points to a rising wave of impatience with corporations that take advantage of public benefits while sending jobs abroad. Deere, for example, has benefited from agricultural incentives, yet its decision to offshore production is now raising questions about its ongoing eligibility for such programs. Despite the growing political pressure, Deere's response has been far from calming. The company has attempted to manage the situation through press statements and interviews with executives, but these efforts have done little to quell the anger. In February 2025, internal memos leaked to the public revealed that Deere's executives had anticipated the backlash but decided to proceed with the offshoring plans anyway, dismissing it as a manageable reputational risk. This admission only fueled public outrage, sparking renewed calls for greater corporate accountability. As the political landscape shifts, Deere now faces not only economic challenges, but also the rise of a more vocal political movement determined to hold the company and others like it accountable for the wider consequences of their offshoring decisions. The impact of John Deere's layoffs goes far beyond just the financial bottom line. For many individuals and families, these job losses represent a profound personal hardship. Take Matthew Schultz and his wife, for instance. Both were employees at the Davenport Works facility and were laid off on the same day. Matthew described the feeling as a crushing disappointment, comparing his initial pride in joining John Deere with the sense of betrayal he now feels. The couple now faces significant financial uncertainty, with concerns about paying rent, car bills, and covering day-to-day expenses. The immediate financial strain is one thing, but the emotional toll of the layoffs is equally heavy. Discussions among former Deere workers reveal widespread feelings of being undervalued and a deep sense of disillusionment with the company's leadership. One former employee, reflecting on a 20-year tenure with the company, expressed frustration over what he saw as overhiring and the prioritization of profits over experienced employees. His concerns echo the sentiments of many long-term workers who devoted years of their lives to Deere, only to find themselves abruptly out of a job. John Deere's decision to shift production to Mexico set off a chain reaction that rippled through entire communities. The impact wasn't just felt by the workers laid off, but by local businesses that had once thrived on the influx of cash from Deere employees. With fewer people working at the plant, revenue for these businesses started to dwindle, leaving many struggling to stay afloat. Families who once had stable lives were now faced with the harsh reality of economic instability, with basic needs becoming harder to afford and fewer job opportunities on the horizon. As John Deere's reputation takes a hit, the door has swung wide open for competitors to make their move. Disillusioned farmers who had long remained loyal to Deere are now reassessing their options. Rising equipment costs, layoffs, and diminishing customer service have prompted many to look at alternative brands. Kubota, CNH Industrial, and Caterpillar have all stepped up their game, aggressively marketing themselves as more reliable and customer-focused than Deere. Kubota, which has traditionally specialized in compact equipment, has made significant strides in expanding its presence in the US market.
Compared to the weight ratio, so you have a 10,000-pound machine, which is easy to transport, easy to move around.
Known for its affordability, simplicity, and reliability, Kubota is particularly appealing to small and mid-sized farmers who feel alienated by Deere's increasing push towards automation and proprietary technology. To further its appeal, Kubota has invested heavily in Texas and Georgia, reinforcing its commitment to American manufacturing, something that resonates with farmers who want to support companies that create domestic jobs. Meanwhile, CNH Industrial, the parent company of Case IH and New Holland, has been focusing on row crop and livestock-focused operations. Unlike Deere, which has been plagued by the backlash over offshored manufacturing, CNH has managed to avoid much of the controversy. Case IH recently launched a range of mid-range tractors and harvesters that compete with Deere's offerings at more affordable prices, making them an attractive option for farmers looking to cut costs. CNH's financial services division has also stepped up, offering bonuses for trade-ins against Deere equipment, further sweetening the deal for disgruntled customers. Caterpillar, traditionally associated with heavy machinery for construction and mining, has begun making inroads into the agricultural sector as well. The company has modified its equipment to meet the needs of large-scale farming operations and is quickly gaining attention in the high-tech farming world. Caterpillar's precision agriculture division is positioning itself as an alternative to Deere's closed system approach, which has alienated many high-tech growers. By offering durable equipment and reliable after-sales support, Caterpillar is making a strong case for itself as a viable option for farmers looking for a more customer-centric approach. While John Deere struggles with the fallout from its outsourcing decision, these competitors are actively shaping the future of the agricultural equipment market. The automation gamble. The push towards automation has left many small and medium-sized farmers, especially in the Midwest, feeling left behind. Critics argue that Deere is moving too quickly towards high-tech solutions without adequately supporting the farmers who rely on their equipment. The company's top-down approach to introducing this technology has caused frustration. Farmers are concerned about the affordability of these new machines, the lack of proper training, and inadequate service options. Additionally, Deere's proprietary software systems, which limit customers' ability to repair their own machines, have been a growing source of tension. Even as right-to-repair legislation gains momentum in several states, Deere's ecosystem is seen as increasingly closed off, with a more corporate-driven approach that alienates its customer base. This shift toward automation has also sparked concerns about job displacement. As Deere moves away from human labor in both manufacturing and field operations, it has left many workers feeling betrayed. The layoffs of 2024 have added fuel to the fire, with some former employees pointing out the irony of Deere investing in robots while laying off the very people who helped build the company's legacy. This perception of prioritizing technology over its workforce has damaged the goodwill that Deere has long relied upon in rural communities. Despite the backlash, Deere is doubling down on its vision for the future. The company argues that automation is essential for survival in a rapidly evolving industry. According to Deere, fewer people will work on farms in the future, and the key to success will be data and precision technology. Deere may have an edge in the tech department, but the growing dissatisfaction among its customer base could undermine its efforts to market this vision. The challenge now is not just creating smarter machinery, but convincing farmers that these new machines are still built for them. For decades, John Deere has been a deep connection to American farmers. That bond is now under intense pressure. The decision to shift manufacturing to Mexico, even as the company posted record profits, has left many longtime customers and employees feeling betrayed. The layoffs, outsourcing, and the perception that corporate shareholders are being prioritized over rural communities have triggered what many are now calling a trust deficit crisis. Sales are slowing, dealer sentiment is declining, and competitors are starting to pick up the slack. In smaller markets, where community relationships are key to purchase decisions, John Deere is seeing a noticeable dip in orders. Farmers who once viewed Deere as a brand that represented quality and local pride are now questioning whether the company still shares their values. It's no longer just about the price or performance of Deere's equipment, it's about principle. One Iowa farmer explained it in a trade publication. "I didn't stop trusting Deere because they built bad tractors. I stopped trusting them because they stopped building for us." The company's digital ecosystem, once seen as a tool for empowering farmers, has become a point of contention. The proprietary software, restrictive service agreements, and ongoing disputes over the right to repair have soured many customers' opinions. While Deere has made some strides towards compliance with state-level repair laws, the perception remains that the company has transitioned from being a partner to being a gatekeeper. This shift, coupled with the move to outsource manufacturing, has fostered the belief that Deere is more interested in enforcing control than collaborating with its customers. Betrayal of trust is a tough pill to swallow, and for John Deere, it's proving to be a bitter one. The company built its reputation not just on technological innovation or production output, but on a deep cultural loyalty and a shared sense of purpose with farmers. As that relationship starts to fray, the real challenge for Deere will be whether it can win back the trust of customers with discounts or product upgrades. The question now is whether the company can regain the confidence of the farmers and communities that once defined its very identity. If it fails to do so, the impact could last far beyond just this current dip in goodwill. Losing government support. For years, John Deere has enjoyed substantial benefits from a range of government programs designed to support American manufacturing and agriculture. These included federal tax incentives, state-level workforce development grants, and subsidies for agricultural equipment tied to domestic production. Deere has long been a symbol of American industrial success, using its Made in USA branding to secure favorable treatment from lawmakers and agencies. However, the decision to shift a significant portion of its manufacturing operations to Mexico has put many of these benefits in jeopardy. The question now is whether a company that offshores jobs should continue to receive taxpayer-backed support. The backlash in Washington has been swift, with members of Congress introducing proposed revisions to several subsidy programs. One prominent initiative is the American Workforce Retention Act, which would limit subsidies for any company that outsources more than a certain percentage of its US-based jobs. While the legislation is still under debate, its momentum is already creating ripple effects across the manufacturing sector, with Deere being a prime example of the kind of corporate behavior the bill seeks to address. State governments are also taking note. Lawmakers in Iowa and Illinois, where Deere has long been a major employer, are re-evaluating the incentives and property tax abatements previously offered to the company. Some officials are even discussing the possibility of clawing back these incentives if Deere fails to maintain the jobs tied to them. This has sparked further conversations about transparency in corporate subsidy deals, with watchdogs calling for audits of Deere's benefits over the past decade. Losing these benefits would undermine the company's cost advantage, especially as it tries to justify shifting to lower-cost manufacturing hubs. More critically, the erosion of goodwill with governments could harm Deere's influence over agricultural and trade policies, which has traditionally been an area of significant leverage for the company. John Deere now finds itself at a crossroads, facing the consequences of decisions that have alienated workers, upset lawmakers, and rattled its most loyal customer base. While the reputational damage has been significant, Deere still possesses several key advantages: cutting-edge technology, global scale, and a century-long legacy of innovation. To recover, the company will need to take bold and visible steps to restore trust, not just with words, but with concrete actions that demonstrate a renewed commitment to its domestic roots and rural communities. One potential strategy could be a reshoring initiative, where Deere reopens or expands US-based production facilities to offset the outsourcing backlash and show good faith to the communities it has impacted. Another approach could involve customer-facing strategies to slow defections and rebuild brand loyalty. This might include offering extended warranties, repair credits, and financing deals specifically for customers in regions hit hardest by job losses. Some dealers have even suggested a Farmers First program, rewarding longtime John Deere customers with service perks, trade-in bonuses, and local support teams. Reinvesting in its dealer network, especially in areas most affected by layoffs, would also help re-anchor the brand in the communities where trust has been most eroded. These measures won't erase the damage overnight, but they would signal a willingness to listen and adapt. It's clear that John Deere's path to redemption depends on whether it can rebuild the trust it has lost before it's too late. It's wild how a company that once symbolized American farming pride is now caught in a storm of its own making. So, what do you think? Is this a rough patch Deere can steer through, or are we witnessing the slow unraveling of a legacy brand? Drop your take in the comments below, and let's get the conversation going. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one.